Hello everybody, welcome to another one of my PowerBox videos. This video here we're going to cover the recently released PowerBox mobile terminal. This is a really handy device, and I suspect that the majority of PowerBox users, if you're a PowerBox user, you won't know how you did without one of these. It's a really handy device. Okay, so what does it do? Well, at the moment it's switched off, so it's not going to do anything. However, I just wanted to show you the rough approximate size, relative to my hand. I've got a medium-sized hand, so you get an idea of how big it is. It's quite thin. Pretty much it's just a touch screen display with a bit of electronics on the rear. So what does it do? So in a nutshell, it can reprogram, it can do firmware updates, it can reconfigure our PowerBox devices. So all our ancillary devices, like some of the PowerBox units, for instance, like I'll show you later with my PowerBox Pioneer, how we can reconfigure some of the settings, or all the settings. We can do firmware updates on various PowerBox devices. So typically what you did with your PC using the USB interface, you can do with this box. The advantage of this box though is, number one, is you don't need a PC. You don't have to stuff around with USB drivers. I know some people have trouble loading the correct drivers, getting the USB interface to work. People with Apple computers always had issues unless they were running the correct emulator, because Apple basically wasn't supported with the USB interface. So this device here, basically you throw your PC out the window, you throw the USB interface out the window, although I suggest you hold on to it because you can use it as a backup. This device here will program all our telemetry sensors, all of the accessory devices that have firmware updates. It'll do firmware updates. And like I said before, if the device has like configuration menus, for instance, with the Pioneer is a PowerBox unit, highly regarded unit, very compact. It does not have an LCD display. So the only way to program it is either from your transmitter, if you have a PowerBox transmitter. However, if you're a Spectrum user or a Futaba user, for instance, you don't, or you can't program it from your transmitter. You normally would have to drag out your PC, hook up the USB interface and program it from your PC. However, this device will allow you to program it from here. On the nice touch screen, it's got a very high resolution display. We'll fire it up in a minute. My camera probably won't do it justice. The screen's extremely bright. I was actually surprised how bright it was. And the camera I'll have to reduce the aperture to get the screen to sort of look okay on the camera. But anyway, we'll fire it up. So what do you get in the box, or in the little packet that it comes in? You get the unit. The unit doesn't have an inbuilt battery, and I'll explain why. So you need to use an external supply for certain devices. However, for other devices, it'll actually get power from the device. So for instance, if we plug it into, say, my Pioneer, which I'll show you later, I've also got a little Mercury unit here, a little PowerBox Mercury SR2. So we'll update the firmware on that, because I know there's been a recent firmware release for some of my devices. So I haven't actually updated them because I was waiting for this mobile terminal to turn up, so I can show you how to update the firmware on those. And we'll also have a look at the configuration settings, say for my Pioneer, which you can configure from here. And what else have I got? I've got a little Servo Bridge here as well. So this is a little little interface, basically convert any servo into a telemetry sort of base servo, and allow you to connect a standard servo onto a P2 bus sort of configuration. There's been, although there is a firmware update for this, so this has got like an older firmware, so we'll connect this up later on as well and have a bit of a play with this. Okay, like I said, you get the unit, nice little LCD display. You also get one cable. So the cable has a standard servo female connector at one end, standard 3-pin servo connector. And then the other end has two connectors. One is a standard servo male connector. So basically you can plug a servo plug in there, and we'll actually hook up a little external battery into there to power the unit. And the unit itself has a 4-pin connector on the rear, or on the top I should say, and it comes with this little 4-way connector. So this is like a larger servo connector, just with 4 pins basically, and it's basically the male variant. Okay. let's plug it in. So actually, before we plug it in, one thing I did notice, and a few people have noticed this on the forum as well, the actual socket on the unit basically has a chamfered corner. So what I suggest you do is, to make this easier to plug in, is get your little scalpel and just basically cut a little bit off the corner here, just off one edge. It's pretty obvious when you get one, you can have a look, and that'll just allow it to slide in a lot easier. So yeah, I just got a scalpel and just basically took a little bit off the corner there, basically chamfered the corner. Okay, let's see if I can plug it in without sort of putting my head in the way. There you go. So on the rear there's a little 4 gig SD card, micro SD card, and there's also a little USB port. So the USB port's not really functional, so that'll be for future use, I assume. You can actually apply power to the USB port. However, it's not powerful enough to run some of the other devices like a Mercury SR2. You can't power up a Mercury SR2. So the unit, once we power up my Mercury, you'll see the unit will actually get power from my Mercury unit or from my Pioneer. However, if you're using a standalone sensor type device or a telemetry device such as my Servo Bridge, there's no power attached to this. So we need to power up the unit, which then also sends power to this. And all I've got for power is a little 6 volt nickel metal hydride pack, just an inner loop pack. It's a fairly standard setup. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plug it into this top connector up here. So we'll just connect it there, and we can apply power, just switch it on. And then what happens is this lead we can use to plug into various devices. Now, when I first switched this on earlier this afternoon, I didn't have my camera out. I noticed there were some German words here. So get started was written in German. And I don't really read a lot of German, so I use Google Translate a lot. However, the unit itself is basically driven with your fingers, so you just swipe the screen. So for instance, I just swiped up there, and we're onto like the main menu, if you like. And this is where you can pick various devices. So when you first buy one of these, one of the first things you need to do is connect it to Wi-Fi. So you need to connect it to your Wi-Fi network. What you'll find is this little Wi-Fi icon at the top will just be white. At the moment, you'll notice you see it red flashing white, and now it's just gone green. And that's because it's connected to one of my Wi-Fi networks here in my garage. So later on, actually I'll show you now. So to get into the Wi-Fi settings, there's like a little Wi-Fi indicator, the Bluetooth indicator, and then we have a little setup, a wheel or gear if you like, fairly sort of standard icons. However, if you touch anywhere in this blue rectangle area, you go into the main settings. So you have a default, I think mine was set to German, so you can change it to English. And then what I recommend you do for the first step is turn your Wi-Fi on, and then we have to set like a Wi-Fi password for your network. So what you can do is click on Wi-Fi, and we'll get a few networks here. Now I'm in my garage at the moment. My garage is all metal, so it's got a lot of shielding. So there's all these networks are my networks. So to get good Wi-Fi in my garage, I have a power line extender. So I send Wi-Fi signals over my power cables, and I've got a little device that plugs into one of my power points, and that basically retransmits a Wi-Fi signal in my shed. So I've got very good coverage in my shed. So at the moment it's connected to that. But what we're going to do is this Costas V. So this one here is my mobile phone. So what we're going to do is, as an example, is we're going to set up a hotspot on my phone, and we'll use my phone as the Wi-Fi network for today's video. I mean, I could use any of these, but yeah, I'll just use my phone. So what I'll do is I'll quickly switch on the hotspot on my phone. And I think I've got a password. I think I put in a password of test Wi-Fi, I think it was. So I've just switched it on. And you'll notice Costas V's gone green, and that's because I was playing around with it earlier. And let's have a look. So I've typed in the password. Unfortunately, the screen's not rotated, but so I've just got my password in here. So for this example, it's just test Wi-Fi. You then hit the little arrow and it'll connect. So what I'll do is I'll go switch this guy off so we don't get confused. So I just want to make sure that you can see that it works off my mobile phone. So just bear with me. Okay, so I've switched my Morpheus external 2.4 gig. Well, that's the other thing I've noticed is I've also got a 5 gig network here, but this unit obviously doesn't have 5 gig capability on the Wi-Fi, so it's only a 2.4 gig modem in there. So I'll just turn it off and on, and we'll do a refresh, and let's swipe up again and go into the network settings, click on Wi-Fi, and just give it a few seconds. And there we go. So you see it's connected just to Costas V. This is my home network. It's actually got a very weak signal. It can see it, but it won't actually connect because it's just way too weak. That's in my house, and I'm in my garage, so the garage is separate to my house. And you notice the signal sort of fluctuates between green and a red line through it. But pretty much, yeah, we're going to be using my mobile phone. And again, just touch on the network, type in your network password. There's a little arrow in the bottom right hand corner when you've got the screen in landscape mode, and yeah, it connects. So I haven't had any trouble. Some of the guys on the forums have had some trouble with various routers and that, so just be aware. Just like any Wi-Fi device, you know, some routers got some complex security arrangements, and all it takes is one variable to be ticked, and yeah, you have trouble. So I'm using an ASUS router, and I generally haven't had any dramas with that with pretty much all my devices that I've ever used on Wi-Fi. Okay, let's have a look. So later on we'll switch on the Bluetooth. So I've got a little Bluecom Bluetooth interface. So this was an old interface that I've had for some time now, which we used to use when the mobile terminal was an Android app. You'd use it with your mobile phone. However, due to complexities with Apple and various other issues, they've decided to go this way, to have a separate little device, so that way you don't have to pay any license fees to Apple. You know, basically it's a standalone device, and you know, that's it. You sort of rid yourself of Android and Apple issues. Okay, let's go back to the main screen. So main screen, we've got our green Wi-Fi icon because we've connected it to our Wi-Fi network. And let me turn it on and off from here again, just to show you. So whenever you turn it on, connects to a Wi-Fi network, it'll go searching for updates. So if you look carefully at the little Wi-Fi icon, if we just wait a few seconds, notice how it's sort of flashing red. You've got the little red bars are moving from the bottom to up. So that's indicating that it's looking for an update. Now, when I first switched this on and connected it to my Wi-Fi network, it detected that the actual firmware in the unit needed an update. So it was all self-driven, self-explanatory. You hit go or whatever it said, I can't remember. And it did the update. I then rebooted. It then did one more update to load all the configuration files for all the devices. So for the firmware, for the telemetry sensors. So what it does is it goes out, has a look. If there's an update, it'll download the update files, say for your PowerBox or a receiver or whatever, and store it on the flash card. So there's a flash card, a 4 gigabyte flash card that comes with the unit, and the flash card just plugs in the back here. You can actually unplug it. It's just got like a standard micro SD socket on there, and it saves all the firmware updates, etc., on the flash card. So once you've updated it, say today, I could take this to the field, and I then don't need a Wi-Fi connection to go program my devices. You could just go there, go to the field and program a device without having to connect it to your mobile phone or anything like that. It's just basically standalone operation. Like I said, just don't forget that whenever you turn it on, and if it does have Wi-Fi, it'll go and have a look, see if there are any updates. If there are updates, it'll download them automatically. You don't have to manage the, you know, this is the advantage of this device. This is the best feature of it, is you don't have to think about it. It just does it automatically. So the only thing you have to do is connect it to your Wi-Fi network initially. Once you've done it once, that's it. It'll always work. And yeah, you don't have to think about it. All the thinking and all that's, you know, taken away from you. You don't have to worry about it. You just basically click on the device, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. And yeah, easy as. It makes life a lot easier. And like I said, it's a really handy device. if you do have any sort of PowerBox hardware in your aircraft, this is really a must-have device actually. I don't know how you'd live without it. And I mean, obviously you can, but it's just a pain in the butt. And the other thing is it's priced reasonably well. The price, I suspect it's not the actual true price of the unit, because the screen's like really nice screen. It's almost as large as the screen on my Core. The screen's very responsive. It's all touch controlled, obviously, you know, swipe, touch, etc. The colors are nice. You know, the camera probably doesn't do it justice. I'm just going to reconfigure the camera in a minute, because I noticed some of the colors aren't quite coming out super right on the camera. And you might see some moire patterns than that, but that's just my camera. It's not the display. Trust me, the display is really, really sharp. Very bright. I haven't tried it in bright sunlight yet. I didn't get a chance today. Like I said, I only got it this afternoon. However, I'll try it again tomorrow, but I don't think you'll have any trouble, you know, in daylight sort of situations. Okay. I might just reposition the camera, see if I can get a slightly better image on my screen, or on your screen I should say, with my camera. And we'll have a look at the Servo Bridge, because this is a fairly simple sensor. We'll hook this up, we'll do a firmware update on it, and have a look at some of the settings that we can change. Okay, let me change my camera positioning. Okay, this is about the best I can do. Because the display on the actual mobile terminal is so bright, it's basically reducing the background illumination, because my shutter speed's actually jumped up a bit. And I'm also getting this banding. That's just my camera, unfortunately. It's just how it is. But anyway, we'll make do. So, Servo Bridge. Let's have a bit of a play with this. So let's connect it up. So, as you know, the Servo Bridge doesn't have any power source or anything like that. So we need to use the little Eneloop battery pack to power up my mobile terminal. And basically I've connected a little patch lead so I can connect the servo connector to it. And this will apply power to the Servo Bridge. And you'll notice the little purple light has come on. Starts flashing. We can just ignore that for now. And all we need to do is select the appropriate menu. So it's obviously not a receiver, it's not a telemetry sensor, basically it's under Accessory. So we click on Accessories or touch it, and we've only got 6 devices to choose from at the moment. If there was more, you could just scroll left or right. In this case, we're going to be having a look at the Servo Bridge, the P2 Servo Bridge in the top left hand corner. So let's select that, and we'll just wait a couple of seconds while the unit goes out and interrogates it. And look, it's prompted us with new firmware version, because I know this particular Servo Bridge has got version 1.1 in it. I knew that for a fact. And also knew there was 1.2 available, but I didn't upgrade it because I wanted to show you on the video how to upgrade it. So all you need to do is we can cancel from here and then upgrade it later, or we can just go OK and upgrade it now. So let's click on OK. I don't know how long it'll take. It's telling us the current firmware is version 1.11, and we're going to upgrade it to version 1.2. So don't forget, this is actually on the flash card as we speak. It's not actually going to go and interrogate the PowerBox servers overseas. I'm in Australia. It's already downloaded the firmware. It's stored on the unit. So like I said, you don't need the Wi-Fi connection. Once you've turned the unit on, it's updated. You can switch it off. And then you don't need the Wi-Fi connection anymore for that day, for instance. Let's hit Start Update. Now you notice the LEDs change colour. It's reasonably quick. When I upgraded the unit earlier on this afternoon, it took a couple of minutes to do the upgrade for the actual mobile terminal. The firmware has been successfully updated. And go back. And what I might do, I mean, you probably don't have to do it, but me being into electronics and that, I might just depower and repower the Servo Bridge. Just reboot the Servo Bridge, so to speak. And then we'll just reconnect back into it again. Wait a couple of seconds. And now you'll notice it hasn't prompted us to do an update because it's probably realised it's got the current firmware. However, if you needed to do an update or redo the firmware, you can just do it manually through that update button. However, as you can see, current firmware is 1.2 and the new firmware is 1.2, so not a problem. Let's go back in again. And you'll notice there's a menu for a whole lot of parameters we can adjust. So normally we can adjust all these parameters from the PowerBox Core and Atom transmitters. However, if you're using one of these devices with, say, Spectrum or JR, you don't have that luxury. So yeah, if you have one of these, you can just go in here and change parameters just by clicking it. It's very, very responsive, super quick. We can change the bus address. This particular device has all these templates, so you can have micro, MIDI, high torque, servo, depending on how you want to set the current, the trip current. So basically it's like an electronic fuse for your servos. And you can set the delay time in how many milliseconds you want to monitor before the current, if it reaches that current value after 3 seconds in this particular instance, it'll trip the unit. That's about it for this particular device, but you notice how it's pretty easy to do the firmware update. Again, don't need a PC, no USB interface, simple as. Alright, what I might do now is I might grab my little Mercury, because that's not installed in my aircraft. My Pioneer is, so I'll drag out my aircraft in a second, but let's have a look at the Mercury. Okay, I've got my Mercury SR2 right up against the new mobile terminal. Now, as the Mercury SR2 has its own power, and we need to power this unit up, I've got it connected to just one battery in this example. We're going to connect the mobile terminal to the data port. It's actually labelled tele/data. So basically the 3-pin servo lead that comes out of the mobile terminal just plugs into the data port, just like that. And the unit itself is going to get power from this lead from the Mercury. So when I switch the Mercury on using its power switch here, you'll see that the mobile terminal switches on. So let me turn on the Mercury. Let me fire it up. And once the terminal switches on, you'll notice the exposure changes. I'll keep that backlight on a little bit. I've got a torch as a secondary backlight, but you can see it's not doing that great a job. The Mercury is quite dark now. And that's again because this screen is so bright, I'm just having trouble getting the video camera to behave. It doesn't have very good dynamic range compared to our eyes, eh? Anyway, you can see the Wi-Fi icon is going crazy there with the white and red flashing away. So it's just been switched on. So again, every time we switch it on, if it detects a Wi-Fi network, so my phone still has its hotspot active. So it's connected to the hotspot. It's now going out to the PowerBox server. It's comparing all the information that's stored on the SD card, making sure it's got all the current firmware updates. And if it needs to download any, it'll automatically do it, and without you having to worry about it. And then once it's done, you'll notice the Wi-Fi icon goes green. So if you have a Wi-Fi connection, I suggest you wait for the icon to go green before you start doing any firmware updates. Okie doke, let's have a look. So now we're connected to one of my power boxes. So we need to go into the PowerBox menu. And in here, you'll see a whole lot of different power boxes. So we've got some of the older ones like the Royal SRS, the Champion, Cockpit SRS, and if I scroll over to the right, the old Competition SRS, a Cockpit Competition, so that's an even earlier one, Professional, and the old Mercury SRS. And they're all, got a nice high resolution picture. So it's actually quite nice display. Like I said, my camera doesn't do it justice. Then across the top we've got the Royal SR2, the new Competition High Voltage SHV, the standard Competition SR2, and then obviously we've got the Mercury SR2, the Evo, and the Pioneer. So later on in this video I'll show you how we do the Pioneer as well. And on the Pioneer, because the Pioneer doesn't have any sort of form of display, there are various gyro settings and all sorts of other settings in the Pioneer, and we can adjust all that from the unit. I haven't actually connected it to my Pioneer yet, so it'll be interesting to see what the display looks like. Anyway, for the Mercury. Now all these, just to make you aware of it, so power boxes such as the Royal, Competition, SR2, the high voltage one, the, let me go across, the Mercury, have their own displays. So normally when you're using it in your aircraft, you have a display. So with those units, there is no facility for your PC to change the settings. You can only do firmware updates with your PC. And same goes for the mobile terminal. You can't actually change any settings in the Mercury. However, you can do firmware updates, of course. So we're going to do a firmware update because this is currently at firmware version 1.3. And I think we're up to 1.4 from memory. And like I said before, I haven't specifically updated it yet. It's not in any of my aircraft, so I haven't needed to update it. But we're going to do that now. So let's select it. And it's actually version 1.5. So currently I'm running 1.3, so we're up to 1.5. So let's hit start update. Let's see how slow or quick it is. This may take a little bit longer than the, what do you call it? I was going to say spark switch. The Servo Bridge. Because the Servo Bridge doesn't really have much information in it, obviously, whereas the Mercury, it's got a little bit, obviously the firmware is a much larger file. So there it goes. It's not super quick. I might just pause the camera and we'll come back to it in a second. But remember, this is actually firmware that's already on the SD card inside the mobile terminal. So it's just updating from the mobile terminal into the Mercury. And like I said, even if we didn't have a Wi-Fi connection at this point in time, it would still do the update, still quite happily update the unit. So you really only probably need to check for updates every now and then. You don't have to do it every time you turn it on or whatever, but obviously updates do occur, and it's handy that the device manages the updates on its own without any user input required. Alright, I might just hit the stop button and we'll just wait till it gets near the end and I'll restart the video. Okay, we're back. We're just over the 90% mark. 97, 98, it's almost done. It's nothing too exciting. Firmware has been successfully updated. Fairly painless. Done. Okay, let's go back and maybe I should reboot the unit. It's detected it, but yeah, easy as that. So, pretty painless sort of process. It's a really handy device insofar as the user doesn't have to think about it. It's everything's automatic now, so it's just basically select the right device and away it goes. Simple as that. And all those people that have had trouble with their PC or PC connections, USB drivers, all that sort of stuff, that's gone all out the window. You don't have to worry about it anymore. In some cases, it's probably still handy to obviously use a USB interface in some situations. But, once you have this, you probably hardly ever use it anymore. All right, let's have a look at the, what are we going to look at? Let's have a look at, say, my Pioneer now, which is in an aircraft. So it's in my Fokker-Wulf. I'll set that up on the table and, we'll change the camera angles and whatever, and have a look at that, and we'll, I don't think there's any firmware updates for the Pioneer from memory, but we'll double check it anyway. Okay, hang on a sec. Okay, this is my Fokker-Wulf. It's got a 3-cylinder SATA. You can sort of have a quick look at the motor there. Can't really see much of it. However, for this video, what's more important, what's inside here, we have a PowerBox Pioneer. So this Pioneer is just sitting in here just in front of the pilot, and you'll notice here we've got a towards the bottom of the Pioneer in front of us, we've got the data port. So that's where we're going to be connecting our mobile terminal to that little data port connector there. And then we'll switch the Pioneer on and we can check for firmware updates, and we're also going to be having a closer look at the configuration settings and what options are available to us, just so we can see what you can change. So this will be really handy for pilots, especially ones that don't fly with a PowerBox Core or Atom transmitter. If you're running Futaba, Spectrum, non-branded PowerBox, you can adjust all the parameters with the new mobile terminal at the field or whatever. Just makes life a lot easier. As I mentioned before, no need for a PC, just a little handheld device, and away you go. Okay, let's switch back to the screen on the mobile terminal. I'll just hook it up, and I won't need to show you how we're going to hook it up to there, but it's pretty obvious. And then later on, we're also going to hook up the little Bluecom adapter to here as well. So we'll provide a wireless Bluetooth connection back to the mobile terminal. Okay, let's switch over to the screen on the mobile terminal. Now we're looking at the screen, and I've turned the Pioneer on, which supplies power to our mobile terminal device. Let's swipe up, and let's select the Pioneer. So click on PowerBox, scroll across to Pioneer, and let's click on the Pioneer. And it actually has a new firmware version. Actually, I think that's because of the Spectrum receivers. I think Richard said there was a firmware update. Let's do the firmware update while we're here. I didn't realise. Might as well do the update. And maybe I'll pause the video and come back when it's done close to 100%. Well, it's a little bit quicker than the Mercury. Yeah, I'll just pause it and we'll come back at around 90%. Alright, it's almost finished. The firmware has been successfully updated, so I'm happy with that. Let's click on back. Let's go back into it again. Pioneer. Okay, so these are all the settings normally I'd have access to through my PowerBox Core. However, like I've mentioned before, if you're running, say, Spectrum, you don't have that facility, so you need to use the USB interface normally. However, now with the new mobile terminal, you can access all the parameters from here. So, we've got output mapping for your gyros. Basically, the Pioneer supports 3 gyro outputs per flight surface. So you got, aileron A, B, and C, elevator A, B, and C, and same for the rudder. And that's our gyro settings there. If you notice carefully, it says swipe to the next screen. So if you've got a device with multiple screens, you just basically swipe across, and obviously we might be able to, no, can't go left in this screen. And here, this is where we set the actual gyro. So you pick basically your actual flight surface, and this is where you can set your gains, attitude assist, which is basically your heading hold mode, characteristic for the gyro, hard, soft, etc. Stick priority, lock fuel, airspeed factor, that's for when you're using a GPS. I'm sure most of you that have used one of these power boxes are familiar with these devices. You can even do the teaching of the gyro here, so you can teach the mounting position. So that's where, because my model's already set up, I don't really want to redo it, but this is where you'd go into to teach the gyro orientation. And then your stick throws, so you have to tell it the endpoints. And this is where you do your failsafe settings. So in the Pioneer, we can set individual failsafe settings. So you notice here, output 3, which is my throttle. This model used to be set up with a Futaba radio on the Pioneer box. However, when I got my Core, I then moved it over to the Core, but I kept the output mapping the same as the old Futaba setup to save wiring changes. So throttle on a Futaba is traditionally on channel 3, so that's where I've got my failsafe. So typically with all my models, if my model's going to failsafe, I kill the throttle, so kill the engines as a safety measure. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, simple as that. So that's pretty handy. If you need to change any of these parameters at the field, you just plug it in and away you go. So what I'll do next is we'll access these same parameters. However, we're going to use a wireless connection. So we're going to use the little Bluecom device. So I've got the little, you can't see it because it's too dark. I'll show it to you in a second. Again, the screen's very bright. Yeah, with the Bluecom device, it provides us a Bluetooth connection basically to the actual device that it's connected to. Now obviously you can only connect the Bluecom device to things like power boxes. You can't connect it to a sensor. No real point connecting it to a sensor, but the Bluecom has to get power from somehow as well. So typically you just use it on a power box. And it's mainly only really handy for, I mean, these days it's probably not as handy as it once was. It's still handy if you've got a model that's difficult to access or whatever. You can connect it in there. It's probably not recommended to leave it connected on there as well, continuously, being a 2.4 gig transmitter. It probably work fine if you're close by, but if you're out in the edges, edges of coverage, right at the limits of your radio system, you don't really want another transmitter nearby transmitting 2.4 gig signals. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'll switch it off. So you notice I'm just switching the aircraft off, and the mobile terminal is now switched off as well. Actually, now that we've got a bit more light, we can actually see the Bluecom adapter properly. So that's it there. It's a pretty small device, just has a single connector. So all I'm going to do is connect this guy here to the same port that we connected this to on the Pioneer. So the little data port on the Pioneer, I'm just going to plug that straight into there, and we'll switch the Pioneer back on. And let me unplug my cable that was going to the Pioneer. If I can get my fingers in there. Alright, let's attach the Bluecom device to my Pioneer. So just plug it in there. Now, obviously we need power for the mobile terminal. So I'm just going to locate my battery, put it in a safe spot. So I've got my 6 volt nickel metal hydride pack. Let's connect it up to here. And let's switch on, if I switch on my model, okay, the model's switched on, so that's applying power to the Bluecom device. And I'll just switch on the nickel metal hydride pack. So just switch that on, so our terminal will fire up in a second. And the background goes dark because of the bright screen. And okay, we've switched on the terminal. Let's switch the Bluetooth on because we want to use the Bluetooth interface. You can leave the Wi-Fi switched on as well, doesn't really matter. Shouldn't really impact it. So it's still trying to connect, or will be connecting through my phone, assuming the hotspot's still on my phone. Just turn the model on, make sure the model's on. Give it a second or two to think about it. And you notice the little Bluetooth icon's gone green, indicating that it's connected to the little Bluecom interface. There's no settings for it. That's totally automatic. So you don't have to, connect via going to like a Bluetooth menu and pair with it or whatever. It automatically connects to the Bluecom device. And I don't think it connects to any other device, so it's pretty much pre-programmed just to connect to the original Bluecom interface. Okay, same sort of thing. So let's select the power box. Obviously, if we select the wrong box, it'll come up with a warning saying it can't connect. So we're going to connect to my Pioneer. And there we go, we're connected. So, same thing. We've got the servo frame rate, the output mapping screen for the gyro, just to tell it what. You can see I haven't set up the gyro in this model at this stage, so everything's on 0. If we go to the next screen, I've just got the default gyro settings in here because, again, I haven't set up the gyro for it. I'm still doing trimming flights. And then, teaching the mounting position, the stick throw. So basically all the menus that you can get from your transmitter are available here. And yeah, this is just a wireless connection. The only thing is now is I've needed to connect the battery up. So you can't really see that in the video there because the background's so dark. But again, the screen's too bright for indoors. There is no screen brightness, I noticed. So, it's not super bright, it won't burn your retinas out, but it's a really nice bright display, so you won't have any trouble reading it outdoors. And that's about it. So that takes care of our Bluetooth connection. Again, like I said, if you pick the wrong device, say we pick a competition, product not found, because it's obviously talking to a Pioneer. Cool. All right. Thanks for watching, and probably catch you on the next video. But like I said earlier in the video, this device is really handy. I don't think you could live without it nowadays. Now that I've got one, I don't think I could live without it. It's really handy. It's gonna be very, very handy in the flight box. Be nice if it had like a cover for the screen to protect it, but I'm sure you can sort of knock something up just to keep the screen protected from scratches and whatever, or put a screen protector on. That's probably good enough. It's fairly robust. The case is fairly solid, so you won't have any dramas there. Obviously, you don't want to drop it from height onto concrete, being an LCD screen, but most of us tend to fly on grassy fields, or at least the pits are got grass in them, maybe not so much the runway. But the pits are usually grass, so shouldn't be too much of a drama there. But yeah, handy device. I recommend you get one. Once you have one, I'll guarantee you won't want to live without it, that's for sure. Okay, we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks all for watching.